Michael Jackson released a film that almost nobody saw, 39 minutes long. Directed by Stan Winston, the man behind the special effects in Terminator and Jurassic Park. Written in collaboration with Stephen King. A budget estimated at several $1 million, and yet when it premiered, it barely made it into theaters. Most people have never heard of it. Those who have often dismiss it as a curiosity, a vanity project. Another example of Michael's increasing strangeness. But if you actually watch Ghosts, if you pay attention to what Michael was doing, you realize something. This wasn't just a short film, it was a defense. A public statement disguised as entertainment. A response to 3 years of accusations that had destroyed his reputation and turned him into a figure of suspicion rather than celebration. The film tells the story of a maestro, played by Michael, who lives in a haunted mansion on the edge of a small town. The townspeople, led by a narrow-minded mayor, want him gone. They call him strange, dangerous, a bad influence on their children. The mayor organizes a mob to drive the maestro out, but the maestro refuses to leave. Instead, he puts on a show. He proves that he's not the monster they think he is. And by the end, it's the mayor, not the maestro, who's revealed as the real villain. The parallels weren't subtle. Michael wasn't trying to be subtle. He was using the film to tell the world exactly how he felt. About the media, about the accusations, about being judged by people who didn't know him and didn't care to understand, and the fact that most people never saw the film, that it was barely distributed, only adds to the tragedy. Michael made something that was meant to change minds, and almost nobody got the chance to let it. The story of Ghosts begins in 1993, but to understand it fully, you have to go back further. By the early 90s, Michael Jackson's relationship with the public had become complicated. He was still the biggest star in the world, but he was also increasingly seen as eccentric. The plastic surgery, the skin lightening, which Michael attributed to vitiligo, but which many people didn't believe. The way he spoke in that soft, almost childlike voice. The obsession with childhood and innocence. Neverland Ranch with its amusement park rides and zoo. It was all strange. And strangeness in the hands of a media looking for stories becomes something more sinister. In August 1993, the strangeness turned into scandal. A 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler accused Michael of sexual abuse. The case became international news. Michael maintained his innocence. He said he was being extorted, that the boy's father, a dentist named Evan Chandler, had demanded money before going to the police. But the damage was immediate and devastating. Sponsors dropped him. Tours were disrupted. The investigation was invasive, including a humiliating strip search where police photographed Michael's body to compare with the boy's description. The case settled in January 1994 for a reported sum between $15 and $25 million. No criminal charges were filed, but in the court of public opinion, the settlement looked like guilt. Why would an innocent man pay millions to make accusations go away? Michael's camp said it was to avoid a prolonged legal battle that would destroy him regardless of outcome. Critics said it was hush money. The truth, as with so much about Michael Jackson, remained murky and contested. What's not contested is how the allegations changed Michael's public image. Before 1993, Michael was eccentric but beloved. After 1993, every eccentricity was reframed through the lens of suspicion. His love of children, which he'd always been open about, was now seen as predatory. Neverland Ranch, which had been a quirky expression of his lost childhood, was now viewed as a trap. His appearance, his behavior, his entire public persona was dissected and pathologized. The king of pop became the weirdo, the suspected, the monster, and Michael felt it. According to people who knew him during this period, he was devastated, not just by the legal process or the media coverage, but by the shift in how people saw him. He'd spent his entire life performing, trying to bring joy, and now he was being treated like a criminal. He became more isolated, more paranoid, and more determined to defend himself. That's where Ghost comes from. The idea originated in 1993, right in the middle of the Chandler case. Michael had been working with Stephen King on another project that never materialized, but King had written a short story called The Ghost, and Michael saw something in it, a framework he could use. A story about a misunderstood outsider being persecuted by close-minded townspeople who feared what they didn't understand. Michael didn't just want to adapt the story, he wanted to transform it into something personal. He brought in Stan Winston, the legendary special effects artist. Winston had created the Terminator endoskeleton, the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, the Predator. He was the best in the business at making the impossible look real. And Michael wanted Ghost to be visually spectacular, not just a music video, a short film with narrative weight and cutting-edge effects. The production began in 1995. They built elaborate sets at Universal Studios, a Gothic mansion, a town square, interior rooms filled with cobwebs and candles and the kind of theatrical detail Michael loved. The budget ballooned. Estimates vary, but some reports put it at over $10 million, making it one of the most expensive short films ever made. Michael played multiple roles: the Maestro, the ghostly figure who lives in the mansion, and the mayor, the antagonist who leads the mob. For the mayor, Michael wore heavy prosthetics, transforming himself into a fat, aggressive, close-minded bully. The symbolism was obvious. The mayor represented everyone who judged Michael without knowing him: the media, the prosecutors, the public. And by playing the role himself, Michael was literally embodying his own accusers. The film's narrative is simple but loaded. The mayor and a group of townspeople arrive at the Maestro's mansion to force him to leave. They call him a freak, say he scares their children. The Maestro, hurt but defiant, challenges them. If he can prove he's not what they think, will they leave him alone? The mayor agrees. And what follows is a performance. The Maestro summons ghosts, dances with skeletons, transforms his own body in grotesque and spectacular ways. It's meant to frighten, but also to entertain, to show that what looks scary can actually be beautiful, that being different isn't the same as being dangerous. The climax of the film is revealing. The mayor, watching the Maestro's performance, becomes increasingly agitated. He doesn't want to be entertained. He doesn't want his mind changed. He wants the Maestro gone because the Maestro represents something he can't control. And when the Maestro finally asks the townspeople if they want him to leave, it's the mayor who screams yes. But the townspeople, won over by the performance, say no. They've seen past the surface. They've realized the mayor, not the Maestro, is the problem. Defeated and humiliated, the mayor leaves. The Maestro stays. And the final image of the film is the Maestro standing in his mansion, victorious but alone. He's proven his point, but the cost is isolation. He's still an outsider, still separate from the community. The only difference is now they tolerate him instead of attacking him. It's a bittersweet ending, and intentionally so. Because Michael wasn't trying to say everything was fine. He was trying to say he'd been wronged, that the people attacking him were hypocrites and bullies, and that even if he could prove his innocence, he'd never really belong again. The film premiered in October 1996, but the release was limited. It was shown at the Cannes Film Festival. It played in a handful of theaters internationally. Sony released it as a promotional video for the Blood on the Dance Floor remix album in 1997. But in the United States, it barely existed. Most Americans never saw it in theaters. It wasn't broadcast on television. MTV didn't put it into heavy rotation the way they had with Thriller or Black or White. For a project that cost millions and featured cutting-edge effects and a collaboration with Stephen King, Ghost disappeared almost immediately. Why? Theories vary. Some say Sony didn't know how to market it. It was too long for a music video, too short for a feature film, too weird for mainstream audiences. Others suggest Michael's tarnished image made distributors nervous. Associating with him was risky. The allegations hung over everything he did. A film about a man accused of corrupting children, made by a man accused of the same thing, was a PR nightmare waiting to happen. But there's another possibility. Maybe the film was too honest, too raw. Michael wasn't hiding behind metaphor, he was directly addressing his accusers, calling them liars and hypocrites. painting himself as the victim. And in 1996, with the Chandler settlement still fresh in people's minds, that message wasn't something the public wanted to hear. They wanted Michael to either confess or disappear, not defend himself. Watching Ghost now, decades later, is a strange experience. The special effects hold up. Stan Winston's work is still impressive. The scene where Michael's face peels away to reveal a skull underneath is genuinely unsettling. The choreography, with Michael dancing alongside skeletal figures, has a theatrical grandeur that feels timeless. And Michael's performance, both as the Maestro and the Mayor, is committed. He's not sleepwalking through a vanity project. He's trying to communicate something. But the film also feels desperate. There's a pleading quality to it. Michael is literally asking the audience to see him differently, to look past the tabloid stories and the courtroom battles and recognize that he's not what they think. And that desperation is uncomfortable to watch. Because by 1996, the damage was done. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict, and a 39-minute film, no matter how well made, wasn't going to change it. The lyrics to the songs in the film reinforce this. Is It Scary? One of the tracks featured in Ghosts includes lines like, "If you want to see eccentric things, I'll be grotesque before your eyes." Michael is confronting the accusations head-on, admitting he's different, but arguing that different doesn't mean dangerous. "Am I the beast you visualized?" he asks. It's not a rhetorical question. He genuinely wants to know if that's how people see him, and he's begging them to reconsider. The critical response to Ghost was mixed. Some reviewers praised the effects and the ambition. Others dismissed it as self-indulgent. A few noted the obvious parallels to Michael's real life, but didn't engage with them deeply. The film came and went without making much cultural impact, and Michael, according to people close to him, was disappointed. He'd poured money and effort into a project he believed would help rehabilitate his image. Instead, it was largely ignored. In the years after Ghosts, Michael's situation didn't improve. He continued to release music, but nothing reached the commercial or cultural heights of his 80s work. His personal life remained chaotic. Marriages, divorces, financial troubles, increasingly bizarre public appearances, and in 2003, another set of allegations. Another investigation, this time a trial. Michael was acquitted in 2005, but the damage again was catastrophic. Through all of it, Ghosts remained a footnote. Film students studied it occasionally for the effects work. Michael Jackson fans discussed it in online forums. But it never became part of the broader conversation about his life and career. It was too strange, too uncomfortable, too direct. But here's what makes Ghosts significant, even if it failed in its immediate goals. It's one of the few times Michael Jackson directly addressed the accusations against him through his art. He was usually more circumspect. Songs like Scream and They Don't Care About Us expressed anger and frustration, but didn't explicitly reference the Chandler case. Ghost did, not in dialogue, not in explicit terms, but in every frame, in every casting choice, in every narrative beat. Michael cast himself as the misunderstood outsider. He cast his accusers as ignorant bullies. He created a scenario where he could prove his innocence through performance. And he gave himself a happy ending, or at least a victorious one, where the townspeople realize they were wrong and the mayor is revealed as the villain. It's wish fulfillment, a version of reality where Michael wins the argument, where truth prevails over rumor, where people see him for who he really is instead of who the tabloids say he is. The tragedy is that reality didn't follow the script. In real life, Michael never got his vindication. He settled the Chandler case, which many interpreted as guilt. He was acquitted in the Arvizo trial, but suspicion lingered. And when he died in 2009, the question of his innocence or guilt remained unresolved in the minds of millions. Some people believe he was a pedophile who used his fame to prey on children. Others believe he was a deeply damaged man who loved children in an innocent, if inappropriate way, and was targeted by opportunists. The evidence is complicated, the testimonies contradictory, the truth, as is often the case, unknowable with certainty. What we can say is this. Ghost is a document of how Michael saw himself in 1996. Not as a predator, not as a criminal, as a victim. Someone being persecuted for being different. Someone misunderstood and maligned by people who feared what they couldn't categorize. And whether or not that self-perception was accurate, it was genuine. Michael believed it. And he was willing to spend millions of dollars and collaborate with some of the most talented people in Hollywood to express it. The film also reveals something about the limitations of art as defense. Michael thought he could change minds through performance. That if he could just show people who he really was, they'd understand. But art doesn't work that way. People bring their biases to what they watch. They see what they want to see. And in 1996, much of the public wanted to see Michael Jackson as guilty. Ghost couldn't overcome that. No film could. There's a scene near the end of Ghost where the Maestro, exhausted from performing, asks the townspeople a simple question. Do you still want me to go? And the children who've been watching the whole time say no. They're not afraid. They see the beauty and the strangeness. It's the adults, led by the mayor, who remain hostile. The symbolism is obvious. Children, in Michael's worldview, were pure, uncorrupted by prejudice. They saw him clearly. Adults, by contrast, were the problem. They projected their own fears and assumptions onto him. This belief that children understood him in ways adults didn't was central to Michael's self-image. And it's also what made him vulnerable. Because his insistence on surrounding himself with children, on creating spaces like Neverland, where kids could visit and play, was exactly what fed the accusations. It gave his accusers ammunition. It made the claim seem plausible to a public already primed to believe the worst. And it put him in a position where proving his innocence became nearly impossible. How do you prove that your love of children is innocent when that same love is what's being used as evidence against you? Ghost doesn't answer that question. It sidesteps it. In the film, the Maestro's relationship with the town's children is never explained or examined. They're just there, present, watching, appreciating. And that lack of engagement with the actual substance of the accusations is one of the film's weaknesses. Michael wanted to defend himself, but he didn't want to confront the specifics. He wanted to be seen as misunderstood, but he didn't want to explain what was being misunderstood. So, the film operates on a level of metaphor that feels both too obvious and too vague. After Michael's death in 2009, Ghosts experienced a minor resurgence. Fans uploaded it to YouTube. It was included in some Michael Jackson documentary collections. Film critics revisited it, noting the craftsmanship and the context. And for a new generation encountering it for the first time, it offered a window into Michael's mindset during one of the darkest periods of his life. Not a clear window, not an unbiased one, but a window nonetheless. The special effects, which had been cutting edge in 1996, aged well. The prosthetics, the animatronics, the practical effects that Stan Winston specialized in had a tactile quality that CGI often lacks. Watching Michael's face disintegrate into a skull or seeing him transform into a skeleton and back again still carries impact. It feels real in a way that digital effects sometimes don't. And the performances, particularly Michael's dual role as Maestro and Mayor, are interesting. The Maestro is quiet, gentle, wounded. The Mayor is loud, aggressive, certain. Michael clearly put thought into differentiating them. And seeing him play both the accused and the accuser, the victim and the villain, adds a layer of psychological complexity to the film. It suggests Michael understood on some level that he and his critics were locked in a dynamic neither could escape. That they defined each other. That without the accusations, the Maestro wouldn't need to perform. And without the performance, the Mayor wouldn't have a target. But the film's ultimate failure, if we can call it that, was in its reach. Michael wanted Ghost to be seen by millions. He wanted it to change the narrative. He wanted people to walk away thinking differently about him. And it didn't happen. The distribution was limited, the audience was small, the impact was minimal, and by the time most people became aware of the film, years had passed and the cultural moment had moved on. There's a version of history where Ghost premiered at the right time in the right context and actually shifted public perception. Where Michael's message got through, where people saw the film and reconsidered their assumptions. But that's not what happened. Instead, Ghost became a curiosity, a footnote, a piece of Michael Jackson ephemera that fans discuss but that never entered the mainstream consciousness. And maybe that's fitting, because Michael Jackson's entire post-1993 career was a series of attempts to reclaim what had been lost. New albums, new tours, new public appearances, all designed to remind people of his talent and overshadow the scandal. And none of it worked. The allegations, true or false, had changed his story permanently. He would never again be just the king of pop. He would always be the king of pop who was accused, who settled, who was tried, who died with questions unanswered. Ghost, then, is an artifact of that struggle, a moment where Michael tried to fight back using the tools he knew best. Performance, spectacle, artistry. He created something ambitious and strange and deeply personal, and it wasn't enough. The world had made up its mind. Or at least enough of the world had made up its mind that changing it would require more than a short film, no matter how well crafted. Does that mean Ghost is a failure? Not entirely. It exists. It's preserved. And for people willing to engage with it, it offers insight into Michael Jackson's psyche during a crucial period. It shows what he was thinking, what he was feeling, how he saw himself and his accusers. And that has value, even if it didn't achieve its original purpose. There's a line in Is It Scary that cuts to the heart of the whole thing. So, did you come to stare or wash away the blood? Michael is asking whether people are approaching him out of genuine curiosity or morbid fascination, whether they want to understand or just gawk at the spectacle. And he's acknowledging that for most people, it's the latter. They don't want the truth, they want the show, the scandal, the freak. And in making Ghost, Michael gave them another show. Not the one they expected, not the one that would rehabilitate his image or clear his name, but a show nonetheless. A performance where he played all the roles. The victim, the villain, the misunderstood artist, the grotesque monster. He embodied every version of himself that existed in the public imagination and tried to synthesize them into something coherent. Something that made sense. Something that would make people see. It didn't work. But the attempt matters, because it shows Michael never stopped trying. Never stopped believing that if he could just perform well enough, be honest enough, create something beautiful enough, people would finally understand. That the truth would prevail. That art could overcome accusation. He was wrong, but the fact that he tried, that he poured millions of dollars and months of work into a film most people would never see, says something about who he was. Not a predator, not a saint. Just a person desperate to be understood. Desperate to be seen as something other than what the headlines said. Desperate to prove that the Maestro, not the mayor, was the hero of the story. And if you watch Ghost with that context, it becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes a tragedy. The tragedy of a man who believed performance could save him, who thought that if he could just show people who he really was, everything would be okay, and who learned too late that some stains don't wash away. Some accusations once made can never be fully answered, and some battles can't be won through art alone. That's the real message of Ghosts. Not the one Michael intended, but the one that emerges when you watch the film knowing how his story ends. It's a message about the limits of spectacle, the inadequacy of defense through metaphor, and the unbearable loneliness of being the maestro in a world full of mayors.